The grand ballroom of Ashworth Manor sparkled with 1,000 candles. Lady Eleanor Ashworth stood in the corner, her hands clasped tight in front of her black mourning gown. Around her, guests whispered and pointed. She kept her eyes on the marble floor. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it.
"Poor creature," a woman said loudly. 28 years old and finally a widow. Perhaps now someone will take pity on her.
Eleanor's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Her late husband's family had insisted she attend this gathering. They said it was proper, but Eleanor knew the truth. They wanted everyone to see her shame. They wanted to remind the world that she had been married to their son for 6 years and never gave him a child. "She looks even plainer in black," another voice added. "No wonder Edmund kept a mistress in London." The words hit Eleanor like stones. She bit her lip hard. She would not cry, not here, not in front of these cruel people. She had cried enough tears in her marriage to fill an ocean. Edmund had been cold and mean. He told her every day that she was ugly. He said she was worthless. He made sure she knew she had failed as a wife. Now Edmund was dead, thrown from his horse while drunk, and somehow Eleanor still felt like she was the one being punished. The butler's voice rang out across the ballroom. "His Grace, the Duke of Thornbridge." The room fell silent. Everyone turned toward the entrance. Eleanor looked up despite herself. He stood in the doorway like a dark storm cloud, tall and broad-shouldered, with black hair and eyes the color of winter skies. His face was hard and beautiful at the same time. He wore his grief like armor. Everyone knew his story. The Duke had lost his young wife 3 years ago in childbirth. The baby had died too. Since then, he had barely been seen in society. He lived alone in his castle in the north, refusing all invitations and visitors. Why was he here tonight? The Duke's eyes swept across the room. For just a moment, they landed on Eleanor. She felt something strange, like he could see right through her. Like he knew exactly what these people were saying about her. Then his gaze moved on. Eleanor's sister-in-law, Catherine, rushed forward. She curtsied so low her nose nearly touched the floor. "Your Grace, what an honor. We did not expect you." The Duke's voice was deep and cold. "I came to speak with Lady Eleanor Ashworth." The room gasped. Catherine's face went white. Eleanor's heart stopped beating. My sister-in-law, Your Grace?" Catherine stammered. "Surely there is some mistake." "There is no mistake." The Duke walked across the ballroom. The crowd parted like water before him. He stopped directly in front of Eleanor. Up close, he was even more imposing. She had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Lady Eleanor," he said quietly, "I must speak with you, privately." Eleanor's mouth went dry. She nodded because she could not find her voice. He offered his arm. She placed her trembling hand on it. Together they walked through the silent crowd. Everyone stared. Eleanor could feel their shocked eyes burning into her back. Catherine looked like she might faint. The Duke led Eleanor into a small library and closed the door. The sounds of the ballroom faded away. Eleanor stood by a bookshelf, her hands shaking. What could the Duke of Thornbridge possibly want with her? He turned to face her. His expression was unreadable. "Lady Eleanor, I will be direct. I knew your husband. We served together in the war before he inherited his title." Eleanor's eyes widened. She had not known that. "Edmund was not a good man," the Duke continued. His jaw tightened. "I know how he treated you. I saw the bruises once when you visited London. I saw how he spoke to you at dinner parties. I wanted to call him out for it. But you always looked at me with such fear in your eyes. I thought interfering would only make things worse for you." Tears sprang to Eleanor's eyes. Someone had seen, someone had noticed her suffering. "Your husband is dead," the Duke said. The words were blunt but not unkind. "His family will throw you out within the month. They have already begun dividing his property. You have no money of your own. Your father's estate went to your brother, and he has made it clear you are not welcome there." Eleanor nodded. She knew all this. She had been trying not to think about it. "I have a proposal," the Duke said. "Stay in my castle tonight." Eleanor blinked. I do not understand, Your Grace. Leave this place now. Tonight. Come with me to Thornbridge Castle. You will be safe there." "But why?" Eleanor whispered. "Why would you help me?" The Duke was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Because I know what it is like to be trapped in a cage made by other people, because you deserve better than this, and because I need—" He stopped. Then he said, "I need someone in my home who understands what it means to survive." Eleanor stared at him. This made no sense. Dukes did not rescue poor widows. They did not offer sanctuary to women with nothing to their name. "What would people say?" she asked. "I do not care what people say anymore." The Duke's eyes met hers. Eleanor thought about going back to that ballroom. She thought about Catherine's sneering face. She thought about being thrown out with nowhere to go. She thought about the rest of her life being passed from one reluctant relative to another, always a burden, always unwanted. "No," she said quietly. "I do not care anymore either." The Duke nodded. "Then come with me. Now, we will leave through the side entrance. I have no belongings here except what I am wearing. I will provide everything you need." Eleanor took a deep breath. This was madness. She barely knew this man, but something in his eyes made her feel safe, and she had nothing left to lose. "Yes," she said, "I will come with you." The Duke's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Relief, perhaps, or maybe satisfaction. They slipped out through the library's side door. The Duke's carriage waited in the shadows. It was black and grand, with his coat of arms painted in gold on the door. A footman helped Eleanor inside. The Duke climbed in after her and rapped on the ceiling. The carriage lurched forward. Eleanor looked back at Ashworth Manor. Through the windows, she could see the candles blazing. She imagined Catherine discovering she was gone. She imagined the scandal that would explode tomorrow. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt something like hope stirring in her chest. The Duke sat across from her in the darkness. "You will have your own rooms," he said. "Complete privacy. I will not intrude upon you, but you will be under my protection. No one will dare harm you or speak ill of you while you are in my household." "I do not understand why you are doing this," Eleanor said again. The Duke looked out the window. "Perhaps I need saving as much as you do." They rode in silence after that. The carriage rolled through the dark countryside. Eleanor watched the moon rise over the fields. She felt like she was in a dream. This morning she had woken up as a despised widow with no future. Tonight she was riding in a duke's carriage toward a castle in the north. What would tomorrow bring? She did not know, but for the first time in a very long time Eleanor felt something other than despair. She felt curious. She felt alive. Across from her, the Duke sat perfectly still. But she noticed his hands were clenched tight on his knees. Whatever his reasons for helping her, they ran deep. He was not as unmoved by this situation as he pretended to be. Eleanor closed her eyes and let the rocking of the carriage lull her. She was exhausted. Exhausted from years of cruelty and loneliness. But maybe, just maybe, that part of her life was ending. The Duke had called his home a castle. Eleanor had never seen a real castle before. She wondered what it would be like. Would it be cold and empty like its master, or would there be warmth hiding somewhere in its stone walls? She would find out soon enough. The journey took 3 days. They stopped at inns along the way. The Duke always secured separate rooms for Eleanor. He was always perfectly proper. They took meals together, but he spoke little. Eleanor did not mind. She was not used to conversation anyway. Edmund had rarely spoken to her, except to criticize. But she noticed things about the Duke. The way he always made sure she had the best seat by the fire. The way he ordered her favorite foods without asking how she knew what she liked. The way his eyes softened when he looked at her, when he thought she was not watching. On the 3rd evening, they arrived at Thornbridge Castle. Eleanor gasped when she saw it. It rose from the moorland, like something from a fairy tale. Grey stone towers reached toward the sky. Ivy climbed the walls. Lights glowed in the windows, warm and welcoming. "It is beautiful," Eleanor breathed. The Duke looked at his home. "I have not thought so for a long time, but perhaps you are right." The carriage rolled through the gates and stopped in the courtyard. Servants rushed out to greet them. An elderly housekeeper curtsied deeply. "Your Grace, welcome home." "Mrs. Winters," the Duke said. "This is Lady Eleanor Ashworth. She will be staying with us indefinitely. Please prepare the Blue Room suite for her. She is to have everything she needs." Mrs. Winters' eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Of course, Your Grace. My lady, welcome to Thornbridge Castle." Eleanor smiled at the kind-faced woman. "Thank you." Mrs. Winters led Eleanor up a grand staircase. The castle was even more magnificent inside. Tapestries hung on the walls. Suits of armor stood in alcoves, but everything was spotlessly clean and well-maintained. This was not a forgotten ruin. This was a home that was loved, even if its master was lonely. The Blue Room took Eleanor's breath away. It was larger than any room she had ever occupied. A fire blazed in the fireplace. The bed was enormous, with soft blue curtains. Windows looked out over the moonlit moors. "Will this suit you, my lady?" Mrs. Winters asked. "It is wonderful," Eleanor said. Tears pricked her eyes. "More than wonderful. I will send up a bath and some supper. As Grace said, you travelled with no belongings. I have taken the liberty of preparing some clothes for you. They belonged to—" Mrs. Winters paused. "They belonged to the late Duchess. His Grace insisted they be kept, but never used. I think she would have been happy for you to have them." Eleanor did not know what to say. To wear a dead woman's clothes felt strange, but she had nothing else. "That is very kind," she managed. Mrs. Winters smiled. "His Grace has not brought anyone to the castle since his wife died. You must be very special, my lady." After the housekeeper left, Eleanor sank into a chair by the fire. She was in a duke's castle. She was wearing a dead Duchess nightgown. She had no idea what would happen next. But she was warm and safe, and no one was hurting her. That was enough for now. A knock on her door startled her. "Come in," she called. The Duke entered. He had changed out of his travelling clothes into a simple shirt and trousers. He looked younger somehow, less like a statue and more like a man. "I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed," he said. "More than I ever dreamed of, Your Grace." "Please," he said quietly. "When we are alone, call me James." Eleanor's heart skipped. That would not be proper. Nothing about this situation is proper. James walked to the window and looked out. "That I find I do not care about propriety anymore. I have followed every rule society demanded. I married the woman my family chose. I was a perfect gentleman. I did everything right. and I still lost everything that mattered. Eleanor stood and moved closer to him. What was her name? Your wife, Sarah. His voice cracked slightly. She was kind and gentle. She did not deserve what happened to her. I am sorry, Eleanor said softly. James turned to look at her. And your husband did not deserve you. You are far better than he ever was. Eleanor's breath caught. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. You do not know me, she whispered. I know enough. James took a step toward her. I know you survived 6 years of cruelty and kept your kindness. I know you held your head high in that ballroom even while they tore you apart. I know you were brave enough to leave everything behind and trust a stranger. You are not a stranger, Eleanor said. You are the only person who ever saw me. They stood there in the firelight, looking at each other. Something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition. Two wounded souls, finding each other in the darkness. Good night, Eleanor, James said finally. Sleep well. You are safe here. Good night, James. After he left, Eleanor climbed into the enormous bed. The sheets were soft and smelled of lavender. She could hear the wind howling over the moors, but inside she was warm. For the first time in 6 years, Eleanor fell asleep without crying. The next morning, sunshine streamed through her windows. Eleanor woke slowly, confused at first. Where was she? Then she remembered the castle, the Duke, her new life. A maid came in with a breakfast tray. Good morning, my lady. His Grace asked me to tell you that you should rest today. Explore the castle if you wish. There is no schedule, no expectations. Eleanor ate her breakfast by the window. She watched the moors stretch out forever, wild and beautiful. She felt wild too, free in a way she had never been before. She spent the morning exploring. The castle was full of wonders. A library with thousands of books, a music room with a beautiful piano, a conservatory with flowers blooming, even in autumn. Everywhere she went, servants smiled at her. They seemed happy she was there. She found James in the library that afternoon. He was reading by the fire, a large dog at his feet. You have a dog, Eleanor said, surprised. James looked up. This is Shadow. He was Sarah's. After she died, he would not eat for a week. I think he understood she was gone. Eleanor knelt down. Shadow sniffed her hand, then licked it. She laughed. The sound surprised her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. James was staring at her. What is it? She asked. You should laugh more often, he said. It suits you. Eleanor felt her cheeks warm. She sat in a chair across from him. May I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really bring me here? Please, I need to understand. James set down his book. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because this castle is full of ghosts. Because I have been alone for 3 years and I am drowning in silence. Because when I saw you in that ballroom, being torn apart by those vultures, I saw myself. I saw someone who had survived hell but was still standing. And I thought perhaps we could help each other survive a little longer. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was the only one who felt like that. You are not alone, Eleanor, not anymore. Neither are you. They sat together in comfortable silence after that. Shadow moved to lie down between them, resting his head on Eleanor's foot. The fire crackled. Rain began to fall outside. Eleanor picked up a book and began to read. James did the same. It was such a simple moment, but it felt precious. Two people who had been desperately lonely, finally finding peace in each other's company. The days began to fall into a pattern. Eleanor would wake in her beautiful room. She would eat breakfast, then explore some new part of the castle. She found treasures everywhere, a tower room with windows on all sides, a garden with a fountain shaped like dolphins, a gallery with paintings of James's ancestors. She and James took dinner together every evening. At first they spoke little, but slowly they began to talk. James told her about his childhood, about the weight of being a duke's only son, about his time in the war, about his marriage to Sarah, which had been comfortable but not passionate. "I cared for her deeply," he said one night, "but I do not know if I truly loved her the way a husband should. We were friends, we were kind to each other, but there was no fire, no connection." Eleanor told him about her own marriage, about Edmund's cruelty, about the loneliness of lying next to someone every night and still feeling completely alone. "He told me I was unlovable," she said quietly. "He said it so many times that I started to believe it." James reached across the table and took her hand. "He was wrong, Eleanor. He was deeply, completely wrong." Eleanor looked at their joined hands. James's hand was large and warm and strong. She had not realized how much she craved simple human touch until that moment. "I do not know how to believe anything else," she whispered. "Then I will remind you every day until you do." Something changed between them after that night. They began spending more time together. James taught her to ride a gentle mare named Snowdrop. Eleanor was terrified at first, but James was patient. He walked beside her, holding the reins, talking to her in that low, calm voice. "You are doing wonderfully," he said. "You are braver than you know." They rode across the moors together. The wind blew Eleanor's hair loose from its pins. She felt wild and free, and more alive than she had ever felt before. James watched her with something in his eyes that made her heart race. She tried not to think about what it might mean. He was a duke. She was a disgraced widow with nothing. This could not be anything more than kindness. But late at night, lying in her bed, Eleanor wondered. She thought about James's smile, the way he looked at her across the dinner table, the way his hand lingered when he helped her down from her horse, the way he had started sitting closer to her by the fire each evening. Was it possible? Could someone like him feel something for someone like her? One evening, Eleanor found James in the music room. He was sitting at the piano, his fingers resting on the keys, but not playing. "I did not know you played," she said. He looked up, startled. "I have not played since Sarah died. She loved music. She would sit for hours and listen to me play." "Would you play for me?" Eleanor asked. "Only if you want to." James hesitated. Then he nodded. He began to play. The music filled the room, sad and beautiful and full of longing. Eleanor closed her eyes and let it wash over her. When he finished, she opened her eyes to find him watching her. "That was beautiful," she said. "You have a gift." "I had forgotten," James said quietly. "I had forgotten so many things. What it feels like to share something I love with someone who appreciates it. What it feels like to want to do things that bring joy instead of just going through the motions of living." Eleanor moved to sit beside him on the piano bench. "I had forgotten too. What it feels like to be warm. What it feels like to laugh. What it feels like to wake up and not dread the day ahead." They sat close together, their shoulders almost touching. "You have given me that," Eleanor continued. "In just a few weeks, you have given me more happiness than I had in 6 years of marriage." James turned to face her fully. "You have given me my life back, Eleanor. This castle was a tomb before you came. Now it feels like a home again." His hand came up to touch her face. His fingers traced her cheekbone with heartbreaking gentleness. "You are so beautiful," he whispered. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Please do not say things you do not mean. I have never meant anything more in my life." James's thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. "From the moment I saw you in that ballroom, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Not because of your face, though you are lovely, but because of the strength in your eyes, the dignity in how you held yourself despite their cruelty, the grace that no amount of suffering could destroy." "James," Eleanor breathed. "I am falling in love with you," he said. "I think I have been falling since that first moment, and I am terrified because I do not want to push you. I do not want to ask for anything you are not ready to give. But I need you to know, you are not unlovable, Eleanor. You are so very, very lovable." Eleanor's hand came up to cover his where it still rested on her cheek. "I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to let someone love me." "Then, let me teach you." James leaned closer. "Let me show you every day how precious you are. Let me prove that you deserve all the love in the world. What if I disappoint you? Impossible. What if I am broken in ways I do not even know yet? Then we will figure it out together." James rested his forehead against hers. "I am broken too, Eleanor. But somehow when I am with you I feel less shattered. Like maybe our broken pieces fit together in a way that makes us both whole." Eleanor closed the distance between them. She kissed him softly, tentatively. James went very still for a moment. Then his hand slid into her hair, and he kissed her back with a tenderness that made her want to cry. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were trembling. "Stay with me forever," James whispered. "Not as a guest, not as someone I am helping, but as my wife, as my Duchess, as the woman I love with everything I have." Eleanor's heart was pounding. "People will say terrible things. They will say I trapped you. They will say I am taking advantage of your loneliness. I do not care what people say. Your family will object. I am a duke. I answer to no one but myself and the king." James took both her hands in his. "Marry me, Eleanor. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for all the years you suffered. Let me show you what real love looks like." Eleanor looked into his eyes. She saw sincerity there. She saw hope. She saw a future she had never dared to imagine. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." James pulled her into his arms. He held her so tight she could barely breathe. But she did not mind. She felt safe. She felt cherished. She felt loved. "I will make you happy," James promised against her hair. "I swear it, Eleanor. You will never doubt your worth again." They spent the evening making plans. They would marry quickly and quietly in the castle's chapel. They would not bother with society's approval. They would build their life here, away from the cruel gossips of London. Eleanor felt like she was floating. Was this real? Could happiness really come so suddenly after so much pain? That night, she could not sleep. She kept expecting to wake up and find it had all been a dream. She got out of bed and wrapped a shawl around herself. She wandered down to the library. James was there. He was standing by the fire, staring into the flames. "I could not sleep either," he said when he saw her. Eleanor moved to stand beside him. "I keep thinking this is too good to be true." "It is true." James pulled her into his arms. "This is real, Eleanor. I am real. My love for you is real." She rested her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. "I love you too," she said. "I did not think I could ever love anyone again. But I love you, James. I love your kindness. I love your strength. I love the way you see me. Really see me." James kissed the top of her head. "We have both been through so much darkness. But I think we have finally found our light." They stood together in the firelight, holding each other. Two broken people who had found their way home. The next few weeks were the happiest of Eleanor's life. She and James spent every possible moment together. They rode across the moors. They read together in the library. They played piano duets in the music room. They laughed and talked and discovered each other. James was attentive and affectionate. He brought her flowers from the garden. He commissioned new dresses in colors she loved. He had a portrait painted of her, not in formal pose, but laughing in the garden with shadow at her feet. "This is how I want to remember you always," he said, happy and free and glowing with life. Eleanor felt herself changing. She stood taller. She smiled more. The lines of worry and fear began to fade from her face. She was becoming someone new, or perhaps she was becoming who she had always been meant to be, before the world tried to break her. Mrs. Winters told her that the entire staff was thrilled. "This castle has been sad for too long, my lady. You have brought joy back into it, and you have brought His grace back to life. We are all so grateful." The wedding was set for a month after Eleanor's arrival. It would be small, just them, the chaplain, and a few trusted servants as witnesses. Eleanor wore one of the late Duchess Sarah's gowns. It was cream silk, simple but elegant. Mrs. Winters helped her dress. "You look beautiful, my lady," the housekeeper said. Her Grace would have been happy to see her things being used this way. She was a kind soul. She would have liked you. Eleanor looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back. This woman looked happy. This woman looked happy. This woman looked loved. James was waiting for her in the chapel. He wore dark blue and looked impossibly handsome. When he saw her, his face lit up. He came forward and took her hand. "You take my breath away," he whispered. The ceremony was short and sweet. When the chaplain said, "You may kiss your bride," James pulled Eleanor close and kissed her with a passion that made her blush. The servants cheered. Afterward, they had a small celebration. Cook had prepared a feast. There was music and dancing. Shadow wore a ribbon around his neck. Everyone was smiling. Eleanor danced with her husband in the great hall. She felt like she was in a fairy tale. The disgraced widow and the grieving duke, finding their happily ever after against all odds. "Are you happy?" James asked. "I did not know it was possible to be this happy," Eleanor said honestly. "Good." James spun her around. "Because I intend to make you happier every single day." That night, James came to Eleanor's room. He was nervous. She could tell. She was nervous too. But when he took her in his arms, everything felt right. He was gentle and patient. He made her feel treasured. He showed her what it meant to be truly loved. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the big bed. Eleanor rested her head on James's chest. "I want to tell you something," she said quietly. "Anything. When Edmund was alive, I used to pray for death. Not because I wanted to die, exactly, but because I could not imagine any other escape. I thought I would live in misery until I was old. I thought I had used up whatever chance I had for happiness." James's arms tightened around her. "But now," Eleanor continued, "I am so glad I survived. I am so glad I lived long enough to find you. Every terrible thing I went through was worth it because it led me here." "I feel the same," James said. "After Sarah died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would just exist until my heart stopped beating. But you made me want to live again, Eleanor. You made me remember what it feels like to have hope." They fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms. Safe, loved, home. But happiness is always tested. About a month after the wedding, a letter arrived from London. James read it at breakfast. His face went hard. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. "My cousin Reginald. He has heard about our marriage. He is coming to visit." Eleanor set down her teacup. "Is that bad? Reginald is next in line to my title if I die without an heir. He has always been difficult, ambitious. He did not like Sarah because she was not grand enough for his taste. He thought I should marry someone with royal connections." "He will hate me," Eleanor said quietly. She felt her old fears rising. "He will think I trapped you." James came around the table and knelt beside her chair. "I do not care what Reginald thinks. You are my wife. You are my Duchess. No one can change that." But Eleanor saw the worry in his eyes. This cousin was important to him somehow. This visit mattered. Reginald arrived 2 days later. He was handsome, in a cold way, with sharp features and calculating eyes. He looked Eleanor up and down when they were introduced, and did not bother to hide his disdain. "So you are the widow who managed to catch a duke," he said. "Reginald," James warned. No, I am merely impressed." Reginald smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. It usually takes longer for fortune hunters to land such a prize. "But you did it in what, a month?" "Quite efficient." Eleanor felt like she had been slapped. All her old insecurities came rushing back. Was that what everyone would think? That she was a fortune hunter, a manipulator? "That is enough," James said coldly. "Eleanor is my wife and your Duchess. You will treat her with respect." "Of course, cousin." Reginald bowed mockingly. "I would never disrespect your choice." Dinner that night was awful. Reginald dominated the conversation. He talked about London society, about all the eligible young ladies who had been heartbroken when they heard of James's marriage, about how everyone was shocked that James had married someone so unsuitable. Eleanor ate very little. She kept her eyes on her plate. She felt James's anger radiating from across the table, but he was trying to keep the peace with his cousin. After dinner, Reginald cornered Eleanor in the hallway. "Let me give you some advice, Your Grace," he said, his voice dripping with false kindness. "Enjoy this while it lasts. James will eventually realize what a mistake he made. He married you out of loneliness and pity, but once he returns to society, once he remembers what he could have had, he will resent you, and then you will be even more miserable than you were with your first husband." Eleanor's hands shook. "You do not know anything about our marriage." "Do I not?" Reginald leaned closer. "I know James. I grew up with him. He has always been too soft-hearted for his own good. He sees wounded creatures and wants to save them. You are just his latest project. But projects get boring, Your Grace. And when he gets bored, where will you be?" Eleanor fled to her room. She sat by the fire, Reginald's words echoing in her head. Was he right? Had James married her out of pity? Did he see her as a project to fix? James found her an hour later. He took one look at her face and knew something was wrong. "What did Reginald say to you?" "Nothing that was not true," Eleanor said. Her voice sounded flat and defeated. "He said, you married me out of pity, that I am a project you will eventually grow tired of." "Eleanor, no." James pulled her to her feet. "That is not true. That is not even close to true." "How do I know?" Eleanor pulled away. "How do I know you did not just feel sorry for me? How do I know this is real love and not just kindness?" James looked stricken. "Because I know the difference. Because what I feel for you is nothing like what I felt for Sarah. I cared for Sarah. I was sad when she died. But you, Eleanor, you have become the center of my entire world. The thought of losing you makes me unable to breathe. The thought of you doubting my love makes me want to tear this castle apart. But what if he is right? Eleanor's voice broke. What if you wake up one day and realize you could have had someone better? There is no one better. James's voice rose. How can I make you understand? You are not a project. You are not a wounded creature. I am trying to save. You are the woman I love. The woman I choose every single day. The woman who makes me want to be better. Not because you need fixing, but because you inspire me to be worthy of you. Eleanor wanted to believe him. But Reginald's poison had done its work. All her old doubts were back. I think you should go, she whispered. I need to be alone. James looked like she had stabbed him. Eleanor, please, just go. He left. Eleanor collapsed into her chair and cried. She cried for the happiness she had thought was finally hers. She cried because she had dared to believe she could have a fairy tale. She cried because deep down she was still that woman in the ballroom being torn apart by cruel voices. She stayed in her room for 2 days. Mrs. Winters brought food that Eleanor did not eat. Shadows scratched at her door and whined, but Eleanor did not open it. She could not face anyone. On the 3rd day she heard shouting downstairs. She opened her door and listened. You will leave this house now. That was James, angrier than Eleanor had ever heard him. I am only thinking of you, cousin. Reginald's voice was smug. This marriage is a disaster. Everyone in London is talking about it, about how you have lost your mind. I do not care what London thinks. You should care what your family thinks, what your name means. You have a responsibility to your title. My only responsibility is to my wife, and you have hurt her with your vicious lies. They are not lies. She is beneath you. Everyone can see it. There was a crash, then James's voice, low and deadly. If you ever speak about my wife again, I will destroy you. I will use every bit of power my title gives me to ruin you. Do you understand me, Reginald? You have gone mad. No. For the first time in my life, I am thinking clearly. Eleanor is worth 1,000 of you. 1,000 of any so-called noble person in London. She has more grace and strength and genuine goodness than anyone I have ever met, and I will not let you or anyone else make her doubt that. Silence. Then Reginald's footsteps heading for the door. You will regret this, James. The only thing I regret is not throwing you out sooner. The door slammed. Eleanor stood frozen at the top of the stairs. James had defended her. He had thrown out his own cousin for her. He had called her worth 1,000 of anyone else. She found him in the library. He was standing by the fire, his hands braced on the mantel. His whole body was tense. James, she said softly. He spun around. When he saw her, relief flooded his face.
Eleanor.
She ran to him. He caught her in his arms and held her so tight it almost hurt. I am sorry, she sobbed. I am so sorry I doubted you. No, I am sorry. I should have protected you better from Reginald. I should have sent him away the moment he insulted you. Eleanor pulled back to look at him. Did you mean what you said? About me being worth 1,000 of anyone else? I meant every word. James cupped her face in his hands. You are the best person I know, Eleanor. The strongest, kindest, most beautiful soul, and I will spend every day of my life proving to you that you are worthy of every good thing this world has to offer. Eleanor kissed him. She poured all her love and all her trust into that kiss. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. I love you, she said. I love you so much, it terrifies me. I love you too, James said, and you never have to be terrified again. I will always be here. I will always choose you. I will always defend you. That is my vow. They stood together in the firelight, the same place where they had stood on so many nights, but this time felt different. They had been tested and they had survived. Their love was stronger for it. "No more doubts?" James asked. "No more doubts," Eleanor promised. Over the next months, their love deepened. They became partners in everything. James taught Eleanor about estate management. She helped him make decisions about the tenants and the land. Her natural intelligence and kindness made her beloved by everyone on the estate. She started a school for the tenant children. She visited the sick and the elderly. She brought warmth and life to every corner of Thornbridge. People who had been wary at first came to adore their new Duchess. James watched her bloom with pride. This was the woman she had always been meant to be. Strong and capable and generous, Edmund had tried to crush her spirit, but he had failed. She had survived, and now she was thriving. One evening, Eleanor had news to share. She and James were sitting by the fire as usual. Shadows snored at their feet. "I went to see Dr. Morrison today," Eleanor said. James looked up from his book. "Are you unwell?" "No, I am perfectly well." She smiled. "James, I am with child." James stared at her. Then his book fell to the floor. He pulled her into his arms. "A baby?" His voice shook with emotion. "A baby due in the spring." James held her face in his hands. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. "I did not think I would ever have this chance again. After Sarah and the baby died, I thought that part of my life was over." "Are you happy?" Eleanor asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy does not even begin to cover what I feel right now." James kissed her softly. "You have given me everything, Eleanor. You gave me back my life. You gave me love, and now you are giving me a family. I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do. You deserve all the happiness in the world." James pulled her close. His hand rested on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents." "Yes, we are." They sat together in the firelight, dreaming of the future. They talked about names and nurseries and what kind of parents they wanted to be. They promised each other that their child would grow up knowing they were loved, that their child would never doubt their worth the way both of them had. The pregnancy was not always easy. Eleanor was sick in the mornings. She was tired and emotional, but James was devoted. He brought her tea and crackers before she even got out of bed. He rubbed her feet when they ached. He read to her for hours when she could not sleep. "You are wonderful," Eleanor told him one night. "I am terrified," James admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I lose you like I lost Sarah?" Eleanor took his hand and placed it on her growing belly. "I am strong, James. I survived Edmund. I survived losing everything. I will survive this too, and you will be the most amazing father." "How do you know?" "Because you are already the most amazing husband. Because you are kind and patient and loving. Because our child will be so lucky to have you." James kissed her. "I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." "I love you too, always." Spring came to Thornbridge. The moors burst into bloom. The castle was filled with preparations for the baby. Mrs. Winters and the other servants were beside themselves with excitement. And then one morning in April, Eleanor's pains began. James wanted to stay with her, but Mrs. Winters and the midwife shooed him out of the room. "This is women's work, Your Grace," Mrs. Winters said firmly. "Go pace somewhere else." James spent the longest hours of his life in the hallway outside Eleanor's room. He could hear her crying out. He wanted to break down the door. He wanted to be with her, but he had to trust the women caring for her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he heard a new sound, a baby crying. The door opened. The midwife smiled at him. "Congratulations, Your Grace. You have a daughter, and your wife is well." James burst into the room. Eleanor was propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. "Come meet your daughter," Eleanor said softly. James approached slowly, like he was in a dream. Eleanor pulled back the blanket. The baby had dark hair and a perfect little face. She was the most beautiful thing James had ever seen. "Can I hold her?" he asked. Eleanor placed the baby in his arms. James looked down at his daughter. She opened her eyes and looked at him. In that moment, his heart expanded in a way he did not know was possible. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise to love you and protect you every single day of your life." The baby made a small sound. James laughed through his tears. "She is perfect," he said to Eleanor. "You are perfect. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this." Eleanor smiled. "What should we name her?" James thought for a moment. "What about Hope? Because that is what you gave me. What you both give me. Hope, Hope," Eleanor repeated. "I love it. Hope Thornbridge." They spent the rest of the day as a new family. James refused to leave Eleanor's side. He brought her food and water. He changed the baby's nappies. He sang lullabies in his deep voice that made both his girls smile. Mrs. Winters brought the staff up to meet the new heir. Everyone cooed over baby Hope. Shadow sniffed her carefully and then seemed to decide she was acceptable. He lay down beside the bed, taking up his role as the baby's guardian. As evening fell, James sat in a chair beside the bed with Hope in his arms. Eleanor was dozing. He looked at his sleeping wife and daughter and felt overwhelming gratitude. 2 years ago, he had been alone and broken. He had been going through the motions of living without really being alive. He had thought his story was over. But then Eleanor had come into his life. She had brought light back into his darkness. She had shown him that it was possible to love again, to hope again, to build a beautiful life from the ashes of pain. And now they had hope. A living symbol of everything they had overcome, everything they had built together. "Thank you," James whispered to Eleanor, even though she was asleep. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me a reason to be grateful for every new day." Baby Hope stirred in his arms. James looked down at her. She had Eleanor's nose. She would probably have Eleanor's strength too, and James's stubbornness. She would be unstoppable. "I will tell you a story, little Hope," James said softly. "Once upon a time there was a sad duke who lived in a castle. He thought he would be sad forever. But then a brave lady came to his castle. She was sad too. But together they learned to be happy. They learned that love can heal even the deepest wounds. And they lived happily ever after." Hope yawned. James smiled. "Your mother saved me," he continued. "And I saved her. But really, we saved each other. That is what love does. Hope. It saves us. It makes us braver and stronger and better." Eleanor opened her eyes. "That is a good story. I thought you were asleep." "I was listening." She reached out and James took her hand. "You are going to be such a good father." "Only because I learned from the best mother." They sat together in the gathering darkness. Their little family, perfect and whole. Outside, spring rain began to fall on the moors. But inside Thornbridge Castle, there was only warmth and love and hope. The next months were full of joy. Baby Hope grew strong and healthy. She smiled easily and laughed often. Eleanor was a natural mother, patient and loving. James was completely besotted with his daughter. He could be found at all hours rocking her to sleep or playing with her. Letters came from London occasionally. News of their family spread. Some people were still scandalized by the marriage, but many more were charmed by the story of the Duke and the widow who found love together. Eleanor did not care what London thought anymore. She had everything she needed right here. One evening, when Hope was 6 months old, Eleanor and James stood on the castle battlements watching the sunset. Hope was asleep in James's arms. "Do you ever regret it?" Eleanor asked. "Choosing me over someone society would have approved of?" James looked at her like she was crazy. "How can you even ask that? I just want to make sure you are happy." "Eleanor, I am more than happy. I am complete." James shifted Hope so he could take Eleanor's hand. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Hope, you are my whole world." "You are my whole world too," Eleanor said. "When I stood in that ballroom and you told me your husband was dead, I thought my life was ending. I thought there was nothing left for me. And now? Now I know that was not the end. It was the beginning." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "It was the beginning of everything beautiful." James pulled her close with his free arm. "Stay in my castle forever," he said, echoing his words from that first night. Eleanor smiled. "Forever and always." They stood together as the sun set over the moors. The Duke of Thornbridge, his Duchess and their daughter, 3 people who had found their way home to each other, 3 people who proved that love could conquer even the cruelest circumstances, 3 people who chose each other every single day. And they lived happily ever after. Not because their life was perfect. There would be challenges ahead. There would be more letters from disapproving relatives. There would be sleepless nights with a teething baby. There would be disagreements and worries and all the normal struggles of life. But they would face everything together, with love, with trust, with the absolute certainty that they were meant to be. James had been right that first night. They had both needed saving, but they had saved each other, and in doing so, they had created something more powerful than either of them could have imagined. A love story for the ages. A fairy tale that was real, and in the end, that was all that mattered.